Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Logan if you're new here. Today I have a what I read during quarantine video plus a quick 1-minute review of each book. I thought that this would be a fun video for people who like to read like me. I was thinking that I could add a new segment onto my channel of what I read that month with like mini book reviews. So let me know if you would be interested in that. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that I'm gonna put a screenshot of I don't know why I did that. A screenshot of the synopsis of each book or like the summary, just so you guys can pause it and read it, or pause it and screenshot it, do whatever you want with it, because I feel like it'd be a waste of time if I sat here and read that to you, because you are capable and you can read yourself. So if you like reading or you want to get into reading or you're looking for some book recommendations, then keep on watching. Okay guys, the first thing that I want to talk about that I read is Harry Potter 1 through 7. I know I'm 23 years late on this little trend here. When I was younger, my parents took me to see every single movie when they came out, and I literally don't know what I was doing because I have no recollection of anything that happened during those movies. So while I was reading the books, they were complete surprise. Like everything that happened was a complete surprise. I don't even have the words to explain how much I loved this series. It's literally mind-blowing to me how J.K. Rowling can just like have these ideas and put them to paper, and it turned out to be literally, in my opinion, the most iconic series ever. Like, do you know how hard it is to write a sequel to a book, and then she did it 6 times? Like, that's unheard of. I have never been more emotionally attached to characters in my whole entire life. I'm in love with Harry Potter. I wish Dumbledore was my grandfather. I have a crush on Ron Weasley, and I'm being Hermione for Halloween. A little embarrassing, but that's the truth, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. Okay, the next book I want to discuss is All the Ugly and Wonderful Things, which was definitely my favorite book that I've read all year. And the premise of this story is the relationship between a 13-year-old girl and a 26-year-old man. I feel really slimy saying it's my favorite book that I've read so far this year, but this was so good. Side note, I'm gonna give a trigger warning just because this book does get sexual, so beware. Okay, so ugly and wonderful are really great descriptors for this book. The best part about this book, in my opinion, is the unsettling storytelling that switches perspectives between characters and also goes back and forth between first person and third person, which I found to be really unique. I like that you can get an insight of like what everyone's thinking or what they're doing at the moment. It also touches over really important and relevant issues such as murder, suicide, abuse, mental health, foster care, jail time, drug use, I don't know if I said that, drugs, every terrible thing that could happen to a little girl growing up in an environment. I found this book to be so emotionally confusing just because, like I said, the premise of this book is between a 13-year-old and a 26-year-old, which obviously is not okay, but the way that the author develops this story, you like feel for both the characters, and in a way like they need each other, which sounds so weird and terrible, but I don't really know how to explain it, so just read it, okay? I promise you. It's sad and disturbing, but nevertheless, it's a very compelling story, and I would be interested to know your opinions on it if you've read it. I know that it has garnered a lot of differing opinions just because of what it's about. I really would like to know what you guys thought about it. This was my favorite book of 2020, and I highly recommend it. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is To Shake the Sleeping Self, which is a memoir about this guy who quits his job the night before his 30th birthday, and he bicycles all the way from Oregon down to Patagonia. Okay, so what I liked about this book is that the story in itself is incredible. I mean, like, who in their right mind would bicycle from Oregon to Patagonia? And it took him 16 months, I believe. So, and he quit his job, like crazy. I also liked that I found a lot of the excerpts from the book to be extremely relatable to my own understanding of traveling and my experiences, so that was really nice. For example, in one part of the book, he's talking about how Americans are egocentric and that other countries see us that way as well. And I found that relatable because during my traveling experiences, I was thinking the same thing. He was talking about that that's something that Americans should be more conscious of, and I agree. Okay, so what I disliked about the book. I think that the first 15 pages, I was super intrigued in the story. When I first bought it, I was so excited to read it. And then it kind of just got really slow for me. Also, throughout the book, I feel like a lot of what was happening was repetitive. And I know it is a memoir, and that's really what happened, so that's fine. I felt like it got just repetitive and kind of a little boring at times. I'm not discrediting this guy. but the book is advertised that, like I said, he rides his bike from Oregon to Patagonia, but throughout a lot of it, like, they're not biking. They take buses, they hitchhike, and even at one part he flies home for Christmas and just stops the whole trip, which once again, it's his journey. He can do whatever he wants, and what he did was still incredible. But yeah, it just didn't live up to my expectations of what I thought it was going to be. So overall, I give this book a 6 out of 10. Okay, the next book I want to talk about is The Silent Patient. Side note, I don't know why my copy looks like this. Like, what the hell is this cover? I don't know where this came from. Okay, so this is a psychological thriller about the perfect couple. You know how all these thrillers start. And one day the wife comes home and she shoots her husband in the face 5 times, and then from that moment on she doesn't speak a single word. She's sent to like a psychiatric ward, and a psychotherapist who's obsessed with her case is determined to unravel her mystery and help her and understand why she did what she did. So this was the first book I read in a really long time that I had no idea about the ending. Like, the last 20 pages, how it all comes together, I was shook. My jaw was literally on the floor reading this. Like, I was so shocked. And I feel like usually when I read books I can kind of have an idea of what's going to happen or like what the author's alluding at, but this one I literally had no idea. I find that oftentimes in thrillers, authors try to distract you from an obvious conclusion by like hinting at possible endings, but with this book I feel like he didn't do that, and I was still completely shocked by the ending of this book. So this is definitely the best thriller book I've read in a really long time. The only thing that I can think of that I didn't like in this book is that there were a couple of minute scenes that I felt like could have been left out just because it didn't really serve a purpose to the overall like storyline. So overall I give this an 8 out of 10. Okay, so the next book I want to discuss is Where the Crawdads Sing, and I actually bought it on my Kindle. I like real books better, but this is like really convenient. So I picked up this book so many times in like the bookstore, and I read the synopsis and I just didn't find it interesting, but I kept hearing great things about it. So then after a while I finally gave it a chance. This is definitely my second favorite read of 2020. So I would say that this book is a gentle yet symbolic depiction of this young girl named Kaya who literally has been abandoned by everyone around her, her parents, her siblings, the school system. Actually, the whole town doesn't like her. It's just about her survival. And then when 2 young men become intrigued by her, it just opens her up to this whole other world and a new life. I loved the writing that the author used. It was so heartbreaking, but at the same time beautiful, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Like, even the description of a firefly suddenly grew like so intimate and probing. The imagery that she uses was literally unreal. Like, I could picture every single scene that she was describing. And the only bad thing I would have to say about this book is that I found the first like 30 pages to be a tiny bit slow. But just a tiny bit, and that's it. Overall, this book provokes a lot of emotion, which I haven't had from a book in a really long time, and it's becoming a movie, which I'm super excited about. And overall, I give it probably a 10 out of 10. The next book is The Tattooist of Auschwitz. This book takes place in 1943, I believe, at Auschwitz concentration camp, and the main character is tasked with tattooing fellow prisoners with their number when they come into the camp. And then one day he encounters this girl waiting to have her arm tattooed, and he vows to himself that he's somehow going to survive the concentration camp and he's going to get married to her. I also really liked how this book gave the reader hope, because the storyline is a testament to the endurance of love and humanity under horrific conditions. I really love the main characters in this, and I just loved the love that they had for each other. I didn't really dislike a lot about this book, but one thing I did notice, the book was actually written as a screenplay, and I think that's obvious throughout because it's a ton of dialogue and not a lot of like atmospheric buildup. I did find that the scenes switched like very quickly. Like, it could be something could be happening in one sentence and then it completely switches to something. There wasn't a lot of imagery throughout, which I really like imagery in a book, and this one didn't have much. So overall, I give this book an 8 out of 10. The next book I have to discuss is White Chrysanthemum. It follows 2 sisters separated by World War II in Japanese-occupied Korea in 1943, I want to say. So Hana, the eldest of the 2 sisters, saves her younger sister in being kidnapped by a Japanese soldier. They take Hana and they turn her into a comfort woman in a Japanese military brothel. A comfort woman just means a sex slave. So what I liked about this book is that it is historical fiction and it's also about Korea. So I felt like I was learning something that I didn't have any knowledge on without it being so boring. And then I also found that it was a beautiful tribute to Korean women who were taken from their homes during this time. And then I really liked how the story changes perspectives between the two sisters, and it goes from 1943 to 2011. It just depicts how both of the sisters are struggling with their lives because of the event that happened when Hannah was kidnapped. And what I disliked about the story was that I wasn't a huge fan of the author's writing style, and also I felt like some parts were like so unrealistic. Overall, I give this a 7 out of 10. The next book I'm going to talk about is Half the Sky. So actually, I found out about this book because I saw the documentary first, and then I heard that it was a book, so of course I wanted to read the book. This is a nonfiction book about the oppression of women in mostly the developing world and how we can work to turn the oppression into opportunities. It focuses on some really heavy topics such as rape, prostitution, maternal mortality, and a lot of other things. What I liked about this book is that the authors make their arguments by introducing you to real girls that they met along their journeys that have been subjected to this kind of oppression. A lot of the girls that they came in contact with, they were able to help them get rehabilitated back into society and maybe help them with starting a business or something so they had an income. And then what I liked the most about this story was that although they talk a lot about the problems, they also are offering solutions on how we as a society can combat these problems. The only thing that I can think of that I disliked was just that it is a really heavy read, so I had to put it down a lot and just like decompress. I think everyone should read it, or at the very least watch the documentary. And once again, it's called Half the Sky. I think the documentary is called that as well. Okay, we're getting near the end. This book follows the sex lives of 3 real women over a decade of reporting. So one is a suburban mom whose marriage has lost its passion. The second is a 17-year-old high school student who has a relationship with her English teacher. The third is a really successful and wealthy woman whose husband likes to watch her have sex with other men and women. So it's super raunchy, I know. So what I liked, first and foremost, I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I think I've already said that like 7 times. But this book is written so much like a novel that I kept forgetting it was nonfiction, and it was so easy to read, at least for me, just because I find nonfiction to be boring sometimes. I found the book to be very like gossipy in a sense, so if you're like nosy, I guess, like me, it's a really entertaining read. I know I've never been in any of those situations, but I feel like you could really find something relatable within each woman's story. I know another complaint among the general population was that a lot of people thought this was going to be more of like a thoughtful analysis, but in reality, the author doesn't really draw any type of conclusions about her studies or what she found throughout her reporting. I give this book a 7 out of 10. I found it really easy to read and it was entertaining. The last book I have to discuss is Americanah. First of all, this book is deceiving. Look at this. How many pages does this look like to you? Because it was 500 and I didn't realize how long it was until I started reading it. So this book follows the story of a young Nigerian couple who departs military-ruled Nigeria for the West. The girl ends up coming to America and she has to grapple with what it means to be black for the first time. The guy ends up going to London and he lives like a super dangerous, undocumented life. And then after 15 years, they both reunite in Nigeria and they reignite their passion for each other and their homeland. What I like the most about this book is that the pages are filled with super insightful thoughts about race, interracial dating, you know, leaving home and coming back home. And I think the author did a really great job of depicting what it's like to be an immigrant in America. And then I really found that the social commentary in this book was really great. What I disliked was that I found that the book could be a little rambly at times, and I felt like a lot of the parts were dragged out, which I didn't even see a purpose for that part being in the story, and then it was being drug out. Also for me, I felt like there was really no climax to the story. It was just kind of like rambly, and she made really great points, and then it kind of just like ended. There was like really no significant thing that happened. But overall, I would give this a 7.5 out of 10. That's all of the books that I have to share today. I know it was quite a lot, but I hope you enjoyed this video. If you read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts on them, or if you have any book recommendations for me, please leave them down below. I would really appreciate that. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching. Bye.